the Bhagavad Gita has a verse that's similar to do your duty without thinking about the fruits of your action or desiring the fruits of your actions. Would you agree with that statement?
If it looks as a prescription, I don't. If it is taken as a result of an understanding, I do. In other words, I'm not the Pope to tell you do this and don't do that. You know, I'm here to tell you understand, and then if obviously once we understand something, we will act in accordance to our understanding, right? So if it is used as a prescription, it means yoga. Yoga means all kinds of, because the Bhagavad Gita is a book about yogas. They teach the various yogas, right? And there is a yoga of understanding, and there is the yoga of action. So it is mostly about the yoga of action. There is a yoga of love. There is, we could argue, there is a yoga of beauty. There is a yoga of perception. There is the yoga of sensations. Hatha yoga is a yoga of sensations. Art is a yoga of perception. And those the yoga of action, right? The right action. The right action is not act in accordance to the do's and don'ts of this or that sacred book. These do's and don'ts, they are like the laws in a country. They are there to maintain some seeming harmony when there is ignorance, when ignorance is prevalent in society. You know, there is something in the Tao Te Ching, I don't remember what it says, but Lao Tzu says somewhere that in the ancient days, in the old days, you know, but what he means in the old days, it means in a perfect world. In a perfect world, there are no laws. Why? Because everybody is nice. You see, if everybody is nice, you don't need laws. If nobody kills, you don't need, or if there are no thieves, no murderers, no con artists, you don't need prisons. You don't need cops, right? So in a perfect world, right? That's what happens. And then you need prescriptions, you need laws, and you need, so the yoga applies to those who are seeking the truth. So they are given prescriptions, but these prescriptions are like when you have a young child, you tell this child, you know, don't cross the street without my supervision. Later on, you will be able to do that on your own, and then you will understand why. But right now, you need my permission, right? So it is a question of maturity. So the yogins, the one who go on, who progress on the yogic path, they don't have the maturity now to understand and to spontaneously do the right thing. So they have to apply the rules of society. And in the case in point of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna belongs to the warrior caste, right? And his duty is to protect his people and to sacrifice his life on the battlefield. And so that's his duty. And Krishna explains to him that the yoga is to do this. But does it mean that the path of the warrior should become the ethics of society? I would say no, because there are, I mean, I am former military guy myself, so I'm a warrior in a sense. But should a nation base its ethics solely on the path of the warrior? No, there is something above that, which is intelligence and love, right? And so what I would say regarding the yoga of action, not to be attached to the outcome of our actions, it means this: to do in a given context that which is impersonal. In other words, to act in a way, to act as if awareness was universal, as if there was only one reality. In other words, in our interaction with people on the battlefield or just on the field of everyday life, to approach the other as being myself. You see, so what would I do? Perhaps in this interaction, that which I would do would be different in this case. If I'm just, interacting with myself. For instance, if I am in a business transaction, would I screw the guy? No, because that's myself. Would I screw myself? No, because that's myself. In other words, I would try to do my best to reach a deal that would be the best for both parties involved. And there is a wisdom in the universe. And then here is the beauty of this, is that there is a wisdom in the universe, that if I live my life according to this recipe, if you, it's not a recipe, but it's what the ancient sages would define as living, following the Tao, following the Tao. It is that. Then if I flow with the flow of life, not opposing the flow as a separate entity, but being one with the flow. You and I, we are part of the flow as these human bodies. They are constantly changing. It's a world of constant transformation. That's the Tao, right? So if you and I, we are the same, ultimately the same reality, I am going to treat you in a different way. But as a result, because I am flowing without resistance with the universe is going to be benevolent to this body mind. You see, it's a kind of, if you oppose, you suffer. If you follow, if you understand what I say, and what I say is not to say yes to everything. It's not. There are circumstances in which we have to say no, but we have to say no in accordance with the flow, right? Sometimes the flow requires for us to say no, sometimes to say yes, sometimes to say nothing, right? So that's the idea. So and we are touching onto ethics. Now, if we look at what the implications are of this way of making decisions and acting in the world, we'll see that we are not interested in the outcome of that which we are doing. We are interested in the now, in doing the right thing. That's where our focus is, to act in accordance with the Tao. We don't worry about what's going to happen next. I mean, we can take that into account, yes, because our actions is not based solely on the current context, but can include projects, etc. For instance, I can buy insurance for my car, or that's about the future. But it's wisdom to do that, or I can save for my retirement. That's also wisdom to do that. It's to be prudent, to be cautious. But ultimately, I do the right thing now because it's the best I can do. And as a result, I don't worry about the future. I just do the best I can do. I'm not attached to the outcome, good or bad, of my actions. I do the right thing, and I trust the universe.
Trust the universe.
Trust reality,
Yeah.
trust life.
Very good. Thank you, Francis.
Francis, on a very similar question, what would you say as one seemingly ages, hopefully in more wisdom, intelligence, hopefully, um, prevent from being or becoming cynical as one uh, attempting to be impersonal in nature, in observing, but yet your experience, your judgment, not necessarily in action, but the impact upon, your thinking. And all one has to do is pick up a newspaper or turn on a television set uh, to reduce, no one wants to be cynical. But at the same time, is just noticing enough? I can see it happening and catch myself. Um, um, but which I'm thankful for. But nonetheless, it's there. It's the rate of change, type of change, especially realms of policies or politics. It's like a drip, drip, drip.
We can observe ignorance at work, right? And in the world, everywhere, in all nations. It's not just America, right? It's everywhere, and the world. But the world has always been a place of conflict, right? Ignorance has always been prevalent. I think the problem is that we have made tremendous technological progress, but we have not made spiritual progress. I think it's quite the opposite, unfortunately. So I'm afraid the world is going towards a clash, and doesn't look good. So it's not being cynical to observe, right? But in the grand scheme of things, you see, the purpose of the world is not in the world. The world itself is a passing fancy, is a transient story, just as our human life is a transient story. We know that about the human life. But we think that the planet Earth of the universe is not a transient story. That's total mistake. It's only a difference in time scale. It's a different time scale, but in fact, it's the same thing. The universe is evolving. The planet Earth won't be here always. The human race won't be here always. Everything comes and goes, right? So if it doesn't mean that we shouldn't act to make things better. We should, but with humility. So with humility, I mean, what is possible? What is possible to us, dependent on where we are, what we can do, what we are good at doing, right? And what we like to do. So we play the game, and ultimately, it doesn't matter whether we lose or win, because the purpose That's it ties to not being attached to the outcome of the action, right? The goal, the ultimate, the final purpose of the world is not in the world. The world is a school. The world is a university from which we graduate in wisdom. The goal is the reality itself. The world is just a temporary creation in it.
Yeah. That's helpful. That perspective, you know, stepping impersonal perspective is helpful.
Because the difference, because you use the word cynical. Actually, you know, the word cynical comes from the Greek kunos, which means dog, right? And it relates to philosophers in the ancient Greece, Diogenes among them, who they were kind of the Indian avaduts. They lived with very little, you know, and they would take everything as it went, you know, and people who called them dogs. They would live like dogs, you know. That's where it comes from, and but it has been distorted because it has become something in which there is a despair. In other words, cynical means we see the world as hopeless, and as a result, we are hopeless, we are desperate. Whereas in wisdom, we see the world as hopeless, but we are not desperate.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Francis, I'd like to follow up on your response to the first question about ethical and intelligence. If the ethical response is not aligned to what intelligence says, then how does one approach with that?
Well, it would mean if it would mean that one of them is false. In other words, it would mean definitely that it's not as intelligent as it seems to be, or that it is not as loving as it seems to be in case of a conflict between love and intelligence, right? Let me give me several examples. One example would be the case of one person who doesn't want to act against the law, but as a result does something which goes against love. Obviously, in this case, the understanding has to be that the law is not absolute, that there is an intelligence above the law that sometimes requires for, although in most cases we have to follow the law, but sometimes there are exceptions to that. And there are other cases in which intelligence has to trump what love seems to tell us, because love is sometimes weak. For instance, the example I use, if there is a terrorist who has taken hostage people, innocent people in a supermarket, right? And starts to kill them one by one, And if the SWAT team has, if the sharpshooter has this guy in the sights of his gun, I mean, the police chief has to give the order to kill the guy. So it seems to be violent and not loving, but what is the alternate solution, right? So it would be weak in that case not to do it. So the conflict between love and intelligence is only apparent. It has a higher level in which there is no conflict. And we have to find this higher level before making any decision. In most cases, it will be immediate. Sometimes it will require some deliberation. The only problem is when there is no time to deliberate. And when there is no time to deliberate, we have to take our best shot, right? That's all. That's the best we can do. So the impersonal action, if we have time to deliberate, we need to reconcile truth, love, beauty, right? To find something that sees all of that as a whole. If there is no time, we take our best shot, but being completely of goodwill in doing it, trying to do the right thing.
Thank you. So just a follow-up to that, Francis. So sometimes then the power of love can trump.
But then it is not intelligence. It is concepts, belief systems still there. It is attachment to theories and models. We use models constantly in our daily activities. When we drive a car, when we speak a language, we are, so to speak, on automatic, right? And that's very useful. But sometimes we have to question those models. And we have to do that when we have some alarm in us going off and telling us, oh, wait a minute. There is something here which is not normal. There is something that is not normal.
Because
it's like you walk at night in a city, right? And there is not too many people around, and you have these guys following you. You change sides, they change sides, you change sides, they change side again. There is something fishy going on there.
so there may be some situations where then innocence may blindside love. That could happen. Innocence may come into play and blindside the true love.
It's not true love because there is never conflict between true intelligence and true love. The conflict is only between true intelligence and apparent love, which is in most cases going to be turn out to be weakness. or between true love and apparent intelligence, which in this case, it's going to be a model, a theory that we are attached to, but which is not adapted really to the current situation.
Thank you, Francis.